My name is Catherine Lewis. I'm going to lead this course in animation using Flash for schools. My background has been, over the last 10 years, as an academic in technology and education. So I've got a very broad knowledge of lots of different softwares in creating and designing for education. Okay, so with that, let's move on to this module, or Module 1. It's an overview of the Adobe Flash interface. It's a very basic overview, and it's designed to give teachers just some confidence in using Flash, because students will pick this up very quickly and really run with it if they're interested in game design. So this workshop's on 2D animation, game design's 3D animation using different software. But this is a really great start for students to understand really what goes on behind the scenes when animators are creating cartoons, and how to do storyboarding and how to make what's called animatics. And animatics are basically the main keyframes that you'll be using. And then when they put duration into it and want to make the animation smoother, they use what's called in-betweens. So we'll cover those things later, but in this lesson we're going to look at how to create a new file for Flash or Animate CC. We're going to learn how to adjust the stage settings and document properties, how to add layers to the timeline, how to manage your frames, keyframes and blank keyframes in the timeline, which is really quite tricky, and it's a real important bit of learning Flash. How to import things into your library, how to use the tool panel, and then finally how to preview your animation and save your animation. So let's get started. We're going to create a new file, and we've got a choice here. And in the past it was a lot more limited than this, but with all the new platforms that you can put your technologies on, like iPhones, you can design for those. We're going to use ActionScript, which is a programming language. We won't do any programming in this course, but this will cover all the Flash and Animate CC. If I was going to design just on Animate CC, which is the professional version, it's the latest version of Flash, I would use HTML5. Air is for mobile devices, and then we've got these things which we won't worry about. But we'll go to ActionScript 3. Now, if we want to put this on YouTube, which I plan to, YouTube asks that it's more than 800 pixels in width, and if you don't, you'll get a fuzzy YouTube clip. So I'm going to make this 1200, and I'm going to make the height 800, and that should make it safe for me to put it on YouTube. It'll also create an FLA file, and we'll learn about files later, file types as well. We're going to keep the frame rate at 24. That's like the standard frame rate, and it's how many frames per second. Okay, so let's get started. So we now have a stage on our screen that we can do things with, and we're going to add things to this stage. So the stage, it's a big white rectangle in the middle of the screen. It's the area where the viewers can see when the movie is playing. It contains the text and the images and the videos. You can go to view and put in rulers or a grid so that you can position when you draw. I basically use 2 lines when I'm drawing, and I'll create them myself, especially with like the walk cycle. I'll have one for the right foot and one for the left foot so that I can position it on that, and then one for the head, so I can see where the head, because the head will kind of bob up and down according to the pose, the movements of the poses. Okay, so let's go to the timeline. So we've got a timeline here. To get a timeline up, we go to Windows and Timeline, which is already ticked. We've got tools. I'm also going to include properties in our window, and I'll just put that aside for now. And I'm also going to create a library, which is there. Okay. And that's there. The panel's there. Okay. Now, when we want to add layers, we click on this bit here. Okay, and so your first layer is always going to be your background layer. This is how I've been taught. You can abbreviate it, or so that background can just be blank. You can add a background of an image. You can make your background white, different colors, transparent. If we go to layer 2, we can rename that as well. So let's put drawing for a start, or drawing 1, let's say. Okay, so that's basically how you add layers and rename layers. And here's the tricky bit. So we're going to learn about frames, keyframes, and blank keyframes, which is critical in animation. So I'm going to get my tools panel, which I'm sure I had. Tools, where is it? Okay, come on, tools. Where are they hiding? Okay, so I'm going to grab my tools panel, and I'm just going to write what these things are right now. So a frame, actually I'm going to do it with the brush tool, and I'm going to change the color. We haven't gone over the tools panel yet, but I'll just do these first. Okay, so a frame is basically like filling in to create more time or duration of the keyframe or the blank keyframe. Okay, so when we use a frame, on a Mac, we're going to click function F7, function F5, okay, if we're going to do a keyframe, these are the basic poses that we want in our animation, and that's keyframe. Sorry, it's taking so long. I should really just type it out. Okay, function F6, or on a PC, you can use Shift F6. Okay, now a blank keyframe. This is really very slow. Okay, thanks for being patient here. Blank keyframe is, of course, function or Shift F7. Now, these shortcut keys, only the F5 comes up when we go up to insert on the timeline. I'll show that to you. So there's a couple ways we can go about it. We can go insert, this is the slow way, a frame, which is function F5, or keyframe, which it doesn't show, but it's function 6, and blank keyframe, which is function F7. Or we can just do it as a shortcut. Now, a frame, now I'm going to lock my background. I'm going to create a new layer. I'll just show you, if I want to get rid of that information, I just hide it there, and I can work on this layer now. I can lock that, I can bring it back. Okay, so let's do create a frame. So on layer 3, which I've clicked on, my first frame is got a blank circle, and we're just going to do function F5. I'm going to hide that. Okay, now it's creating dark gray lines, and that means that there's frames in there. That's just creating duration. Now if I go back and I want to put a keyframe, because that'll be my first, I've always been taught to do your first frame as a blank keyframe, but on this occasion I'm going to do function F6. So I'm going to put in a keyframe. So I'm going to go back and show you again. Alright, so that is just a dark gray circle. I'm going to function F6, and it's still a dark gray circle. However, I'm going to put something in it now. So I'm going to put an oval in. Okay, and so the next frame is blank because there's nothing in that. And just think of them as little containers. Okay, when there is something in it, it'll be a dark circle. Okay, so I'll go back to that. The end of your frames will be shown by a blank rectangle. Okay, I'm going to put in a blank keyframe now. Now, the difference of using these is if you use a keyframe and okay, if I put in another keyframe here and I fill it with another oval, but let's say I'm going to make this green, is that keyframe will have something in it those will all be blank. I'll get to this one, it'll have something in it. If I want to increase the duration of this, I'm going to use F5s. Okay, and so I'll have that image on all those different frames. Okay, if I go back here, I initially started off with just frames. Now I've got something in there, but this is all blank. Okay, so this light gray means there's something in it. So there's that image, but it's been carried forward. Here, that keyframe is the only one that has something in it. All these others are blank. Now I could click on that and go function 5, and it'll turn gray because now I have something on every single frame. Okay, let's create a new layer and we'll do a blank keyframe here. Now a blank keyframe is a change. It's similar to a keyframe, but the difference is that there's just absolutely nothing on the stage, only the layer with the blank keyframe. So all the other layers are going to be unaffected because they have their own set of frames and keyframes. Okay, if you create a keyframe, it will carry that information with it into the other boxes, and then when you create another keyframe, it'll have the information from the previous keyframe as well. Okay, so here's our blank keyframe. So function F7 or shift F7, and I'm going to hide those, lock those layers. So this is the only layer that I can see right now. That, when I put the cursor up to it, it's got a rectangle around, empty box. It means there's nothing in there. So I'm going to put something in there. Let's put a polygon in. and we can play with the color. All right, so I think we'll leave frames and blank keyframes for now. And what I want to cover quickly is the toolbar, or the tool panel, sorry. Oops. Okay. So on the tool panel, we've got a selection tool where we can select our object and delete it, or we can move it around. We've got a sub-selection tool, which I don't use that much. Well, we're going to use the free transform tool a lot, and we can make symbols out of that, which I'll show you later. But again, we can identify that object, and we can create, we can modify it and make it into a symbol, which means that we can put it into the library. And then we can use it over and over again. Okay, but we'll leave that for now. This is for 3D rotation. We won't be using that either. Won't use that very much, but that's for going around a different object and cutting it out. Our pen tool, text tool. Now the line I do use a lot, and as I mentioned before, when I do a walk cycle, I do 2 lines, usually, a red and a blue. There's a red. And that will help me identify the left and right feet. And let's see if I can change it. Oh, okay, let me do that. Okay, we'll get rid of that. So when I create a stick man, which we'll do in this module, it'll help me know which foot is going up and which foot is coming down. Okay, you've got your shapes tools. So you've got an oval, and I'm going to change the highlight here, and we've got a polygon. Now I can change that to a star if I want. The other thing is that with the shape tools, you've got a fill tool and you've got a stroke and fill tool. So the stroke is the outline, which I've just separated, and the fill is the color in between. And we'll cover that in the next chapter with graphics. But we can also look at connecting them. So in the properties tool, let me just click on that. I should have, here's our shape tool, and it'll tell me the fill and stroke. So it says I have no stroke, but there is a stroke line there, which is red, and the fill is blue. Okay, now the other thing you can do is, I'm not sure why that stroke color is not coming up, is you can change the stroke size. You can change the style, which is kind of cool. And this is even cooler, is you can create these different lines. So we'll do in the next module, steam coming off a coffee cup, which is going to give us a nice swirly line. And then you can also Well, you can also join them. I think it's down here. So if you want the objects, the stroke and fill to stay together, you click on this, and when you move it, it should theoretically stay together, but it hasn't. But we'll cover that next lesson. The other thing is when you're doing lines, you can work in a smooth line. Yeah, hang on, get rid of this. Go back to a normal line. It's just when you're drawing. Oh, here we go. All right, here's the object drawing tool. If we click on that and we use our selection tool, this should stay together now, and it doesn't. Okay, we'll leave that. Okay, let's move on. So that's so those are our selection tools. Free transform tool that we'll be using. I use the line tool a lot, our shape tools. I use the pencil when I'm drawing, but you can use the paintbrush and the brush tool. You'll use your bucket tool for the fill for the inside, and this ink bottle, which is for the stroke, if you want to change the color, if you want to erase things, if you want to move things around. And this is your stroke and fill colors if you want to reverse them or click on them for more colors. And I think, now if we want to import an image into a library, we go up to File, Import, and you can either import your image to the stage or to the library. If you import it into the library, it'll automatically show up in here. Okay, and saving your file, pretty simple. So save as, and you'll get some choices of file formats. Now, you'll save it as an FLA. When it publishes, it'll become a Swift file. And that's it. So for Module 1, we're going to make a stickman next and start animating with what we've just learned. The other thing I wanted to say was I'm going to put other videos in which I think are really helpful. You know, this isn't a professional production. It's just for you to get to know me and have a conversation with me through this screen capture. Okay, I'll see you in Module 2.